I never thought I'd wake up to the sound of my own doorbell being used like a weapon. It was supposed to be a quiet Saturday morning, the first one in 6 weeks that didn't start with surveillance reports or coded briefings. I'd just come off an undercover operation that took me through sewers, safe houses, and cartel run warehouses. For once, I wasn't a federal officer. I was just Gavin Miles, a man in flannel pajamas, barefoot, and holding a cup of coffee that actually stayed hot. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. The coffee steamed between my hands as the morning sunlight crept across the tile. Then came the sound again. Ding dong, sharp, impatient. No one rang my doorbell, not without calling first. Then came a voice, firm, rehearsed, and loud enough for the whole block to hear. Resident, step outside immediately. I froze mid-step. That wasn't a delivery guy. That was command tone. The kind people use when they want power they don't have. I walked quietly toward the door and peeked through the peephole. Two men stood on my porch, mid-30s, dressed in black windbreakers with HOA cop printed across the back. One had cheap sunglasses and a fake badge clipped to his belt. The other had zip ties like he thought they were handcuffs. They weren't cops. They weren't even close. I opened the door. "Can I help you?" The taller one stepped up like he'd been waiting for that line. "Sir, we've received multiple complaints. Yard debris, unauthorized flag display, and verbal aggression toward an HOA board member. You need to come outside." I blinked slowly. The stench of energy drink and cheap cologne hit me like a wave. "Which department are you with?" I asked. He hesitated. "That's not relevant." Wrong answer. I studied the badges. Shiny laminate with a clip art eagle and no numbers. "You're aware impersonating an officer is a federal felony, right? That's up to 3 years in prison." The shorter man's jaw tightened. "We're authorized by the HOA." That word, authorized, told me everything. Elaine Porter, president of the Brookhaven Meadows HOA, self-proclaimed guardian of community standards. She'd been on my case since I refused to take down my thin blue line flag, called it political, divisive, non-compliant. What she didn't know was that flag wasn't a statement. It was a memorial for two partners I'd lost in the field. The two men shifted, exchanging nervous glances. I didn't need to see behind them to know Elaine was nearby, probably crouched somewhere with her clipboard and binoculars, watching her little stunt play out. I kept my tone calm, low, and steady. "Tell Elaine this is the last time she sends anyone to my door. Next time, it won't be me answering." They didn't move. "Go on," I said quietly. "You're trespassing under Penal Code 602. That's another charge." The taller man swallowed hard. "We're just doing what we were told." "Yeah," I said, closing the door halfway. "That's what everyone says before the cuffs come out." Through the peephole, I saw them freeze, then whisper something into their radios. The same radios Elaine used during her community patrols. And sure enough, her voice crackled through, faint but clear. "Go ahead and enter. He's bluffing." I smiled, slow and deliberate. She just made her biggest mistake. The taller man's fake badge glinted under the porch light as he shifted his weight forward. "Sir, step outside now," he barked, voice cracking under false confidence. His partner reached for the zip ties on his belt, muttering something about resisting community enforcement. I gave them one last warning. "You're about to make the worst mistake of your lives. Put those down and walk away." They didn't listen. The shorter one lunged first, trying to shove past me. I caught his wrist mid-motion, twisted hard, and drove him face first into the wall beside the door frame. He yelped as his fake badge flew off and skittered across the porch. The taller one tried to come in from the side. Big mistake. I pivoted using his own momentum to sweep his legs. He hit the ground with a thud, air rushing out of his lungs. They weren't trained. They were pretending. And I'd spent my whole career dealing with real threats. One of them scrambled up, clutching a small canister. Pepper spray. I sidestepped it, grabbed his arm, and yanked him into a controlled takedown. The canister popped loose and rolled across the tiles. I pinned him with one knee and said, calm and cold, "You just assaulted a federal officer." His partner froze. "Wait, what?" I reached into my pocket, pulled out my real badge, and held it at eye level. The gold caught the morning light like fire. "Federal Narcotics Division," I said evenly. "And you're both under arrest for impersonating law enforcement and attempted unlawful entry." Their faces went pale. Behind the hedge, a faint crackle of static gave away the voice that had orchestrated all this. Elaine Porter. "What's taking so long?" "Detain him," she hissed through her cheap walkie-talkie. I turned my head slightly toward the sound. "You might as well stand up, Elaine," I said, raising my phone so my doorbell cam could record her reaction. "You're already on camera, giving illegal orders." The hedge rustled, and she slowly rose, shaking like a leaf. Her perfectly ironed blazer didn't hide the panic spreading across her face. This is a misunderstanding," she stammered. "They were just doing community enforcement." "Community enforcement doesn't involve fake badges or zip cuffs," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You sent men to my door pretending to be police." That's a felony. The shorter man tried to speak. She said it was legal. She said you were dangerous. Dangerous? I repeated, eyes fixed on Elaine. The only danger here is your arrogance. Within seconds, I keyed my shoulder radio. Dispatch, Lieutenant Miles. 2 suspects detained. Third party observed directing them. Impersonation of officers, attempted entry, and conspiracy. The sirens came fast. Real ones. Blue and red lights painted the neighborhood as cruisers rolled up, followed by an unmarked SUV from my division. Elaine's mouth opened, but no sound came out as she watched real officers surround her. When the cuffs clicked around her wrists, the HOA president who thought she owned the block finally realized the law didn't answer to her. And the police she'd sent, they were in the back of cruisers, faces buried in their hands. I looked once more at my flag waving on the porch, the one she'd tried to use as an excuse for control, and whispered, "That's real service, not yours." If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story's only going to get better. The flashing lights turned Brookhaven Meadows into a stage, and Elaine Porter was center spotlight, shaking as officers read her rights. Neighbors stepped out in robes and slippers, clutching coffee mugs, watching the self-proclaimed Queen of Compliance hauled toward a real police cruiser. The 2 imposters, still in their cheap black windbreakers, sat cuffed on the curb. Their fake badges and plastic cuffs were now sealed in evidence bags. My division's SUV parked behind the patrol cars, and Special Agent Ramirez, my partner, stepped out with that look only a seasoned officer can wear, calm, disappointed, and done with nonsense. "Gavin," he said, giving me a small nod. "Heard you had some visitors." "Uninvited ones," I replied. He turned to the nearest officer. "Make sure they're booked under State Statute 843.085, impersonating a law enforcement officer, plus the federal count. The woman in beige over there?" He nodded toward Elaine, who was now crying into her sleeve. "She orchestrated it. That's conspiracy to commit both." The officers nodded, professional and precise. Elaine tried to protest through her tears. "I didn't know he was federal. I thought—" I cut her off, voice low. "You didn't care who I was. You just wanted control." By Monday morning, the story broke statewide. HOA president arrested for sending fake police to federal officers' home. The headlines wrote themselves. Elaine's lawyer tried damage control, painting her as misguided, not malicious. But the footage from my doorbell camera made that impossible. Her voice on tape saying, "Go ahead and enter. He'll fold once you pressure him," played for the whole courtroom. When the judge asked if she understood the gravity of impersonating authority, she tried to feign ignorance. "I just wanted to maintain standards," she whispered. The judge leaned forward. "You used fear and fraud to harass a federal agent. That's not standards, that's criminal." The 2 fake cops got 5 years each for impersonating law enforcement and assault. Elaine received 3 years for aiding and abetting, plus a lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board. And by court order, the entire HOA was dissolved, their authority gone for good. When she was let out of court, the same clipboard she'd weaponized for years was bagged as evidence. That night, I stood on my porch again, the thin blue line flag fluttering softly in the breeze. For the first time since moving in, the air actually felt calm, real peace, not the kind printed on a brochure. Across the street, an elderly couple waved. A few neighbors clapped quietly. The message spread fast. Real authority doesn't need to shout, it just shows up. I took one last look at the camera above my door and smiled. "Lesson learned, Elaine," I said under my breath. "You don't fake law on a real officer's porch." The end.